Join with computer audio. Maybe we got crappy Wi-Fi. Maybe we have crappy Wi-Fi. Just kidding. Just kidding. That's not it.
You know, I just ordered all this super duper shit for you.
Did you? Oh, you didn't need to do that. Thank you. Wow. Super duper shit.
Hey, Colleen.
Hey, Rick. How are you?
I'm good. How are you holding up?
Oh, I just got this thing. Hi, Mike.
Hey.
New CDBG funds that have been awarded to the states and how much is going to each county and everything. So I've been looking at that, and also, you know, I don't know, I'm a little disappointed at this allocation system thus far. Hi, Mark.
Hey there.
Hello, Mark.
Hi.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what I've been working on.
It'd be nice if they could add a couple zeros to that number.
Yeah, so 7 million is going to the state for non-entitled communities, and Clallam County is not entitled. So, you know, but also there's a lot of small cities that apparently, you know, they applied, so they got the money. There's Brian. So now we're just waiting on Graham.
We're waiting on the entertainment.
Yeah. Here, I'll text him.
So how's the Wizard of Oz doing?
Graham?
No, you.
Me?
Colleen,
Yes, Brian.
he just sent an email asking about an invite. Graham
Okay.
did.
Okay. So let's
Want me
see.
to send it to him?
Yeah.
I'll email it to him.
Okay. Thank you.
You're going underwater.
Who, me? Yeah. I can't see very well when it's.
All right, I sent him that link.
Okay. Thank you. What? Oops. County. Oh.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Sorry,
doing?
waiting. Oh, I'm doing okay.
All right.
Yeah, just crazy day with lots of webinars and such. Seems like Friday's the day for them typically.
Well, it's big that the PPP was pushed to Monday.
Yeah, and that it's 7:30 our time, so 10
Right.
Eastern. That's helpful.
Yeah.
And then the governor gave finally some input on, or is kind of releasing the contractors, construction contractors to go forward and begin, go back to work.
Yeah. We'll see if the PPP actually starts funding. I didn't know. I wasn't sure because I couldn't find the link, so I dialed into. There's actually a court hearing on the East Coast today. I've got a former colleague that's filed suit against the Department of Treasury and the SBA for discrimination against minority owned businesses for the rollout of the PPP, and they're trying to have an injunction issued to stop the continued rollout of the program until they fix how monies are being distributed or potentially discriminated through our financial institutions as funds end up into whatever small business hands. So it'll be interesting to see what the outcome of that hearing is tonight.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Hey, Graham, I heard that they've already got so many applications for the EIDL and the PPP loans that we won't even be able to process any new ones because there's only so much money out there. Is that correct?
Oh, I believe it, that they're not going to process any new, like many new lenders are not going to take on new applications, that it's really just whoever's in the queue at this point.
Yeah.
But that I expect it all to be exhausted in shorter than 24 hours now, probably in the first, I don't know, 5-6 hours, because the banks they've already got everything preloaded. And if the system doesn't crash, though, that's the other issue, which we know on April 3rd that the system was crashed. And now you have everyone at the same time that's going to start submitting. And it's going to be like a lottery, unfortunately.
Well, I know Sound is still taking applications from even not orphaned customers.
They
So,
might be taking them, but they'll be in the back of the line.
sure, sure.
So if I have a client with you who banks with US Bank, is it even worth doing a PPP application at this point?
Are they already in line, Rick?
No.
It's still worth, are they a local client?
Yeah.
How big?
It's a small, it's a Chinese restaurant in Squim.
Do you know how the potential loan size?
Well, they've got 10 employees, 10 part-time.
Let's talk after. I might have a lender that may be willing to, do they already have all their information done?
That's my next appointment after this call.
Okay. If you can get the information done by 5, I can ask my contact if he'd be willing to get them into their system to process on Monday.
Okay. Cool.
He
Great.
just took someone for me as late as 2 o'clock today. So
Okay. Okay.
And again, I was told from Sound that they're still taking applicants and they'll be working on it through the weekend, but I don't know if they'll get in before somebody else will.
Yeah, Colleen, yeah,
Yep.
from my bank sources right now, I pretty much that the queuing line is already filled, and it's highly unlikely anybody will get much of anything if they haven't filled out the paperwork already. So,
But they
I
haven't
mean-
started submitting yet, though. So isn't it almost like luck of the draw? Who happens to get in through E-Tran before other people?
well, the banks only have a limited number of E-Tran licenses. So you
Okay.
can't just press enter and send them all at one time. It's the
Right.
people with licenses have to submit, and those banks already have their predetermined order. So if
Okay.
someone's coming in now, unless they have some kind of significant pull at the bank to jump ahead of everyone else, they may
Mhm.
be able to do that. And that's a problem that Congress didn't figure out, is that these banks are for profit. So if I'm running a bank, I may be looking at what's going to be most profitable for me to
course you are.
process because of the fees that are associated with this. And we
Right.
can't be mad at the banks because of that. We need to be mad at Congress for not doing first come, first serve for applications as they're submitted to the bank.
Yeah.
So
Well, it
if
was the
there's-
nature of the mechanism that they chose to use.
yeah,
Right.
Mhm.
right.
Right. And Matt Dynas, CEO of First Fed, was saying in the banking world, they were saying Congress should really just be using payroll taxes, and they have a very good view of the reduction from what was paid previously in payroll taxes to like March and April, how much was paid. That's so that'll show you, who laid off people and who didn't. and using that as a system to help get money to businesses in a more equitable fashion, rather than going through banks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as they can accommodate people who didn't have payroll, sole props and things like that,
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
you know.
So thanks for doing this, Graham. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
And so, yeah, we want to help our folks. And so next Tuesday at 3, we're going to have a webinar that Graham will run, and Ben will get that out here shortly on a constant contact invitation, where he'll go over what he's doing with us, but in a more detailed manner. Right now, he's just kind of prepping us, but it's basically, how do you, what strategies should businesses use and that have employees to ensure they get as much loan forgiveness as possible? Right? Is that a good
Yeah.
description?
Yeah.
So I'll shut up now.
Well, well, to that extent, though, yes, I'm working on a presentation, but what I'd like to do is I should have it finished on Sunday evening. And I really love the collaboration of work. I mean, Colleen, you've done such a great job bringing everyone together. And it's been a lot of fun working with everyone that's part of this team. And any presentation that any one of us are doing, it's really been a collective effort. And what I'd like to do is send that presentation out ahead of time and receive any kind of feedback on Monday. And then that way we can vet or make any final edits before the presentation on Tuesday. And then that way I'm getting input from additional participants or from the other advisors as well.
Yeah, awesome. Is Mike Rykoff going to join us?
I don't know.
Um,
You want me to nudge him?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
We'll give Mike a quick minute before I start.
And I think we invited Brian Koo. I'll text Brian too.
Anyone else still drinking coffee?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I had my last cup at about 5:30 this morning.
Well, I've moved into others.
What are you on now, Brian?
It's brewed, but it's not coffee.
I hope to make that transition and enjoy some of the NFL draft tonight, and maybe pick up a growler from Gastropub.
Right on.
Yeah, I'll hit a growler down at Agnew and or somewhere. Right now, I've got my outdoor cooler going.
Mm.
Oh, nice.
Am I paranoid by not wanting to get growlers right now? Like that's an infection vector, right?
It kills it. Yeah.
Depends on how strong the
Yeah.
If it's an imperial IPA, it's okay. Is that?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we all have our own levels of what we're, I'll sacrifice it for some beer. I'll take the risk.
All right. So I emailed Mike. I probably should just text him, I suppose. But
And Brian's getting on.
great.
So you want for this meeting?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He said he doesn't see the invitation.
Yeah, I didn't see one either for me. I don't know.
I shouldn't be in charge of that, and I think I was yesterday. And I was having terrible internet reception, so that's why we're over here at Brian's cottage today. And he
Oh, nice.
got all sorts of new gear for us, so we're getting 1 gig of internet here. And before we were like sharing 16 megabits per second. And
Yeah.
my son, who's doing classes at Gonzaga, Ben and I was on there. There were a lot of not happy faces.
Wow.
Watching the circle go around. And if someone turned on the TV, I was, get that
No video games.
off. Yeah, no way. No, we don't do that.
Hmm.
Is it Brian at EDC Team Jefferson?
It's director at EDC Team Jefferson. So you didn't hear back from Mike?
I have not heard anything back from Mike.
Yeah, and Brian says he can't find it. Okay.
Are you emailing him the link?
Invitation.
Okay.
Okay.
I
All right,
just was
good.
gonna call him on his phone. And you did just send Mike the invitation
Oh,
too?
Brian's on.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Mike as well?
Yeah, Mike Reichhoff. That
Okay.
Mike dot,
Yeah, you just said Brian.
yeah,
Maybe
well,
we just go for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go for it. I texted and emailed Mike, so
oh, and Judy's on, good. And I know Lena wanted to be on too, but I think because I screwed it up yesterday and then I deleted that one, then I sent this one, it just,
I
yeah,
was
Mike's not
amazed.
answering.
When I got the one yesterday, I thought, wow, Graham is turning this around
Oh,
fast.
yeah, Mike has an invitation as well.
Okay, Mike has one. Mike was invited and he's not answering his phone. And Brian, did we say Brian's on?
Brian is on.
Yeah, Frank's here.
Okay, good. Okay, so, and Judy's on, so I'll probably text Lena just to make sure she knows about it and then we can go.
Awesome.
Go for it.
Yes, please.
All right. Today isn't going to be too long. It's just focused on the strategy of looking at pandemic unemployment assistance in the Paycheck Protection Program. And for anyone that hasn't seen the pandemic unemployment assistance eligibility checker, this is what I've been using as my main tool. This is on the Washington State ESD website. I guess I got to zoom out of my presentation to view that. Can everyone see this eligibility checklist?
Yep.
Okay. So for many of our, and we're going to go into this a little bit more, but just generally, once people are on the PPP program and they bring someone back, they may not be qualified for the regular unemployment insurance. If someone is already getting paid $15 or $16 an hour, and they're going from full-time to part-time, the amount of benefit that they would receive from standard unemployment is minimal. The focus of this isn't trying to wiggle our way into the regular unemployment. It's more so just the focus on pandemic unemployment assistance, which if you see, you may be eligible, or an employee may be eligible if, question one, are you out of work or working less than normal because of COVID-19? So if you can say yes, that your hours have been reduced because of COVID-19, that your employer is facing either their shutdown or restrictions or loss of income, to where now you've lost hours, which many of us now operating, we can say that in some way that whether it's accounts receivables from clients that may not come through, or revenues that are dropping, or any other uncertainty that as a business owner, we're reducing hours, there is a strong justification that can easily be made to say, yes, I'm going to look at reducing my hours. So now all of a sudden, if you reduce an employee's hours, they may qualify for this pandemic unemployment expanded assistance. Okay, I don't know anyone yet that is officially qualified or gotten into this, and I'll actually open this up to the advisors. Have you worked with anyone where they've actually already received the $600? Yes.
My
Yeah.
husband got, well, first he got the 235 and then yet today he got 2,740.
Okay. Do we know of anyone that's made a claim for reduced hours that has received the $600 a week?
No.
Okay. So this is why it's also an experiment we're trying. And at the very least, if they've been completely laid off, they should definitely be applying. Like as Colleen mentioned, her husband receiving over $2,000 for pandemic unemployment assistance, that this is retroactive back to March 27th.
You want all these people to be a panelist?
So first step
And
is that.
can I add real quick, Graham? I was surprised. So I thought it was $600 a week if you were self-employed, but he got for 3 weeks, 2,740. So I don't know how they came up with that. And previously they gave him 230. So it's kind of confusing or interesting to me.
It's
the
interesting to me too.
235 The 235 is what they're using as a baseline when
Yeah.
they give everybody their initial approval.
Right? So
And then on top of that is the 600. And then
So
they
it's-
come back and they figure out what you should really get.
Right, but so if you add 235 and 2,740, that's 2,900 and $75. Divide that by 3 weeks because it's for 3 weeks starting. No, it's not, because he got shut down before that, so he got state dollars for a couple weeks, and then or maybe the week before, and then on the 29th, the 1,800 would have kicked in.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't think he'd get anything from the state. I thought he would get just the 600.
That's why it's worth applying for this and just going through the process.
Mhm.
Well, that state stuff, because early on, Inslee waived he put in place the emergency rules for the unemployment, and that's what the 235 is that Mike's getting.
Okay.
Okay. Why is pandemic unemployment assistance an issue for our clients? Well, employers are having an issue competing with the unemployment insurance and the pandemic unemployment assistance pay. So if employers are having this issue, how are we getting past that? And that's the strategy that we're going to be looking at next. And also it's an issue not only with the pay, but also how long that pay is going on for, which goes until potentially July 31st, where if they're getting onto the PPP now, or let's say May 1st, that's only running through the end of June. So you have employees potentially looking at, well, this is going to go longer. It's guaranteed more money. Maybe it's better for me just to stay on the pandemic unemployment assistance. The uncertainty with this program, though, is we don't know 100% if a reduction from 40 to 30 hours will work, but it's better to try it in the process to see if it'll work than to not try. So if we figure out that it does work a couple of weeks from now, we would have lost a couple of weeks of earnings for, it doesn't go to our employers, but it's a good way to benefit our employees. And once again, this is paid by the state, but it's reimbursed by the federal government. So the way I look at it is we want to get as many federal dollars allocated to our state as possible to make sure that we're resilient economically moving forward past COVID. So the PPP and the pandemic unemployment assistance combo is, and we're going to go into more of the forgiveness on Tuesday, but the Paycheck Protection Program allows the reduction of employees' pay up to 25% and still count your employee in your head count without affecting the forgiveness amount. And if you reduce that employee wage or time by 25% while on the PPP, you could potentially now have them apply for the pandemic unemployment assistance because they can now state that they've had a loss of hours in the program as part of their work. Now, the uncertainty also deals with how do we treat part-time employees and their reduction of wages. You know, at least for now, I'm recommending a conservative approach, which is not to reduce employees' wages by more than 25%. There is potential to treat part-time employees differently because when you get into the head count, according to regulations, they say a full-time equivalent employee. There is no definition for that yet. So what is that? Is that someone that works 20 hours a week, 30, 40? We just don't know yet. So take the conservative approach until we know the rules of the road moving forward. So how does this program work? Here's an example, okay? You have an employee that works 40 hours a week at $20 an hour for $800 a week. Over 4 weeks, that's $3,200. That same employee could earn on unemployment insurance and pandemic unemployment assistance approximately $250 plus $600 a week for $850. Instead of competing against unemployment, you could potentially reduce the hours from 40 to 30. Now, if that employee earned $850 a week, now not only are they not working, you know, some of them look at an opportunity to stay at home, but they're potentially making an additional $200 that month while not working. So they're able to do maybe a side hustle, get paid under the table, stay at home, spend time with family. So this is why it's difficult for our employers to incentivize these employees to come back to work. Now, the alternative strategy is to say, well, instead, look at doing 30 hours a week at 20 hours or at $20 per hour for $600. That employee can now make a claim for the pandemic unemployment assistance for $600 a week. Now that employee is making $1,200 a week, higher than either scenario above. And what that would do is, let's say you've got 5 employees that you've reduced, and now that's at the same rate of pay, 5 employees, that would be $200 a week per employee. If that's now $1,000 extra dollars, what could you do with that? Well, if you're an owner and you normally only pay yourself $1,000 a week, now maybe you're paying yourself more. Okay, that's going to help you in your bottom line, that because it's going to be forgiven, as long as you're not exceeding that $100,000 match or restriction for a salary on the year, which would be prorated about $8,300. Pay yourself more, okay? And if you're able to pay yourself more, or instead, if you want to hire another employee and pay them more money to help generate revenue in your company, that's an alternative option for you as well. I know that this seems counterintuitive, that it doesn't seem like the program is intended to be this way, but the founders, Congress, probably didn't intend for people to be incentivized to stay at home either. So we need to take advantage of this until Congress can actually fix this problem where they're incentivizing people to stay home. But there is no restriction on paying yourself more money or paying another employee that's in your organization that maybe they've stayed on and they're not getting the pandemic, whereas some people are. So now you can up their pay as kind of a reward throughout this program.
So Graham, could you, say you're married, there's no requirement to keep the same employees. If you're married and you own a business, can you suddenly hire your wife? And
Yes.
then instead of $8,300 for yourself, and maybe you only paid yourself $5,000 a month, or maybe you paid yourself nothing, I don't know, and just, which you're not supposed to do, but there's no restriction on bumping that up. So now you're at like 17.6 between you and your wife, which will start chipping away at that 75% has to go to payroll.
Yes, so you're correct to a certain extent that you're still going to be limited by your total loan amount. And that's kind of Congress's way to make sure that there's no windfalls to someone, because you're still going to be basing your total loan on what you were paying already. But if you're able now to reduce some employees' wages while at the same time, you know, I'm looking at this is doing a good thing for employees up here on the peninsula as well, because now they're earning more overall, right? We're not structuring this to be greedy just for the employer. It just so happens that if we take advantage of both programs at the same time, which benefits the employee, that yes, now we could potentially hire the wife or pay, or maybe the wife's owner, we hire the husband, right? In either scenario, that we could split those pays or increase one person's pay. but you still have to factor in the employee headcount, right? Which if you had 10 employees and now you're down to 9 during the forgiveness period, you would have to reduce your forgiveness amount by 10%. So if your total loan was 100,000, your forgiveness amount is now 90,000 that you'd be working from, unless you restore headcount by June 30th, 2020 to match previous levels. That's still a part where I want more guidance from the SBA and Treasury before I'm telling people to, not maintain the same type of headcount. I think going with the conservative approach early on to make sure that forgiveness, that they're still going to be able to take advantage of 100% forgiveness is the best approach initially until we do have more guidance.
Yeah, what's going to stop someone from hiring back all the employees on June 25th or June 29th and then paying them payroll and they say, oh, I bumped it back up to full amount.
What would stop that is that they still, even if they had a loan for $100,000 and they let everyone go and it was only their pay, well, they're only forgiving their own pay, which they can max out at 100 grand, which is 16,000 of the 100 grand. So that's the incentive to still keep them on, because people, this is a grant. We all want to take advantage of this to have as much of it forgiven as possible. But there's ways, I think, to structure it to max out not only the PPP, but use the PUA as an additional tool to how you're compensating employees and taking care of them. You brought up a good question about hiring a wife. I've had a couple clients that said, well, what if I bring on a carpenter? I need some work done and they're a restaurant owner. Yes, underneath the rules, you could do that. But on the business side, you're running into all kinds of liability, licensing issues, things like that, that as a restaurant owner, you shouldn't be employing people directly because you don't have the proper licenses to hire carpenters and be doing certain work and you're not insured for it. So underneath those rules, I don't see any reason why you couldn't hire anyone else to do whatever work you needed. But just be aware of the extra liability that you open yourself for if you're hiring people as W-2 workers and doing payroll forgiveness that route.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, the federal U.S. labor law that came out that said that FMLA would be granted 80 or 2 weeks pay, or each employee would be granted 2 weeks pay of sick leave.
Yes.
So the client that I work for won't be able to bring everybody back because some people are home because their children are home out of school. And so that'll qualify for the sick leave. So my question is, will those wages be included in the PPP?
No, those wages will not be included in the PPP, but if they were already shut down and they were home, most of these people could apply those sick wages for the 2 weeks prior to them being approved for the PPP. No one was really the program opened up April 3rd, but it crashed. So the program really opened up April 6th. And once people started applying, not many people were funded that same week. So most people really have the first 2 weeks of April that they could use for that FFCRA credit that you're talking about for those 80 hours. Is your client in a situation where that's not possible to apply the 2 weeks prior to the PPP?
I really don't know. I'll have to check with him.
Okay. You should be able to do both, but not at the same time. But you should be able to take advantage of that credit for the 2 weeks prior to them being on the PPP.
Okay.
There's also an employee tax retention credit. You're not able to take advantage of that one and the PPP though. So when you're looking at those tax credit programs, you can do the FCRA and the PPP, just not at the same time for the same wages.
Okay.
So Graham, can I ask a question just so I understand this strategy of increasing like the owner's pay or something like that? So you're saying that if you've you're limited by what your historical payroll is, right? In your application.
You're only limited by your historical payroll
Yeah.
to the extent of the total loan amount.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah. So if you use this strategy to kind of reduce hours of some employees, get them onto PUA so that they're actually making more that way, which incentivizes them to stay on the payroll and stay employed and come to work, then you free up some money that you could use back. You could absorb that by increasing somebody else's salary up to that amount.
Yes.
I got it.
Yep.
So I remember hearing from ESD that to do the shared work program, you have to get approval for that first. And today, Susie Levine said that there's really no purpose of doing for employers to do standby. She said she wishes they had not put that out, and just standby is making the clunky system even more complicated, but shared work is probably the solution for employers to go with, but you have to apply first to be approved for that program.
Interesting. So that would change some things because shared work, you need, I believe, 3 employees or more to participate in that program. And
Okay.
for smaller companies, standby, if I am a 2-person company. So if I were to elect to do this, I'd need to do it through standby, stating that my assistant has a reduced hour base to make this claim. Hypothetically, if I see any answers back from people or this works, I'll make sure that I report it right away, and I'd like feedback from other people. It's not illegal to apply for this. I mean, you state what your hours are. It's up to ESD to follow up, and I'm not encouraging anyone to lie about what their numbers or hours are, but without further guidance from ESD, all they're stating is that a reduction in hours for that employee would qualify them. They don't say how many hours that needs to be or by what percent.
Right.
Yeah, and the shared work is 50 to 90% of the former hours
Right.
is the shared work program. So that you could just, I mean, that gives you quite a bit of flexibility.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also I think emphasizing, and I wish ESD did a better job at this, but that if an employer tells the employee, I'm offering you work again, even if it is at reduced hours, and there is, what is it, good cause? If there's good cause for the employee not to accept the work again, then they could potentially still receive unemployment benefits. But if they turn it down and they don't have quote unquote good cause, then they no longer are eligible to receive any type of unemployment benefits.
Right.
Kind of a trap for the canary.
That's why what Graham came up with is so good, because it incentivizes them to both work and do the PUA rather than just the PUA.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's harder to get regular unemployment. I mean, and regular unemployment, what you receive from that is determined based on how much money you were making to begin with. So that's why people, if you were already at that level where you're making minimum wage, the $600 a week is a massive incentive for you to be on pandemic unemployment assistance. The regular unemployment isn't that much of an incentive. So that's why we're not as concerned about trying to make the regular unemployment work. It's let's get the $600 a week flat rate kicker. And that also goes through the end of July. So even once you're done with the PPP, you could still potentially keep them at 30 hours a week, keep your overhead lower as a business moving forward while they're collecting that $600 on top of that.
So even if the governor opens, like, say, construction up at this point, if you have reduced hours, you still could have your employees do this if you were a contractor. What about for the self-employed or the employer that's applying for this as well?
I haven't gone as much into the employer, the owner of the business. I think that that's a little bit more challenging to say I'm running my business, I'm getting PPP, but I'm reducing my own hours and I'm the owner. I just think that that looks a lot more shady, and I'm not an advocate. I'm not recommending that to anyone that's self-employed to try and leverage both. I guess you could say, you can make the claim that your business has been impacted, but how do you, if you're not already paying yourself on an hourly basis, and it's a lot more difficult to make that recommendation compared to employees that you have set hours for.
So with
It's a good question, though.
employed though, all they asked for was the P&L for each quarter of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And so if, I don't know.
But if at least during the PPP, I think that it's not a strong argument to say I'm getting paid less during the PPP, because you're being compensated for what you made in 2018. And since it's not on an hourly, or 2019, at least for that 8-week period, I think it's a no-go. I think outside of that 8-week period, outside the 8-week period, you can definitely be applying for PUA.
And if you're self-employed, too, you're not going to want to reduce your pay. You want to, because you're supposed to, you're paying yourself.
Right. And that's why it'd be a difficult argument to go to ESD and say, I'm cutting my own wages while I have the PPP, and I'm just going to carry this loan. That doesn't make it doesn't make sense. It's kind of like the smell test, right? Like, I think it's easier to do that for an employee of saying, well, we have some uncertainty with the market, and that's why we're doing some reduced overhead and costs for the business at 30 hours a week, to see kind of where we are as we navigate the next couple months. Moving past COVID, these are uncertain times. We've never seen this as a business. So that's why we've reduced our hours to 30, and we hope to fully ramp up at the end of, by the end of July. And that's a lot easier story to tell than if you're a sole prop.
Could we, I'm a lot better with numbers than I am with words.
Yeah.
Possibly do, or I don't know if you've done it and it's another slide, but if I put together an Excel spreadsheet with some, like an example, here's a person's the PPP amount, and this was their average, therefore, and they had X many employees, and maybe, this is where you entered your number of employees, and so you divide it by this and kind of create something that would show people from a financial math perspective how this works.
Yeah, I didn't do a lot of that. I did a little in this example, and I agree with you. When you put it into Excel, it's a lot easier to read, and also with multiple employees to see how this all adds up. But I'd be happy to do that this weekend.
You don't mind? That'd be great.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
And last couple of thoughts on this, and we're going to talk more about this on Tuesday, is we previously just talked about that reduction, but what happens if you bring your employees back by June 30th or restore wages? And it looks like right now, at least, that you're exempt for that reduction and forgiveness if you restore those levels. a big question right now is what is a full-time equivalent employee? And this last question is one that I'm hoping that we can dispel for people that are concerned, which is if you don't meet the 75% threshold of payroll, that you're disqualified altogether from forgiveness. So I'm hearing this from clients that there's something circulating that they think if they have a $100,000 loan and they don't meet $75,000 in payroll, that they don't get anything forgiven underneath the program. I want to dispel that. I haven't seen a lot of people or other firms that are saying that. What I'm seeing though is if you don't hit the $75,000 of payroll, it's just let's say you only hit 60,000 in payroll. Now that's going to be your threshold for forgiveness amount underneath the $100,000 loan. And if you have I think the uncertainty more so is if you have rent and utilities, that you wouldn't be able to necessarily take the full 25,000 of rent and utilities of 100,000. I think that you would need to look at, okay, here's 60,000 of payroll, 75% or 60,000 divided by 75% puts you back at 80,000. And the gap between 80 and 60, that would be 25% now at that level. And that's what you'd be able to forgive rent and utilities at. And your total forgiveness would be 80,000 instead of the 100,000. It wouldn't be that you get nothing forgiven at all. That's the calculation and understanding that I'm at right now. I don't know if you guys are receiving that question from clients, or have a different understanding than me, but I don't want people thinking that they're not going to be eligible for anything.
That's how I've been understanding it and proceeding. I hope that's right.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Hi, Lena.
Hi, I joined a little late, but it's just been crazy. One of the questions that I have is, do we know that the pandemic unemployment insurance, that you'll be qualified if you're 30 hours or less a week? Is that what you're saying, Graham?
Yeah, we don't.
Okay.
That ESD has not issued any set parameters. All they've said is a reduction in hours could qualify you for the PUA. So I'm saying go ahead and apply because you're being truthful in your application that you've had a reduction in hours. They haven't provided any further guidance that it needs to be 25%, 50%, or a set amount of hours. So I'm encouraging people to apply and try this strategy until we know it doesn't work.
Yeah, so I actually have a couple of employees that did file for unemployment. So I'll let you know if that is the case. And they were 20 to 30 hours a week, let's say. So I'll see if it's different for them, for one employee over a different one.
Thank you.
If that, as soon as I know, and as far, I haven't heard anything from them yet. The other question that you kind of touched on earlier was the 80 hours of paid sick leave, the mandatory paid sick leave that employers have to offer. Do we know, I think I missed one of the webinars on this topic, but do we know what the criteria is yet for that? Is the governor's shutdown order?
It's not all employers have to offer that. Don't forget that you also have to be a covered, meaning you're exempt if you have underneath 50 employees. So for most businesses on the peninsula, that's not going to be the case. And it's, under 50, you're exempt. And also to be eligible, you need to be underneath 500. So it's really 50 to 500 is the range where this is going to be applicable. And if that applies to someone, I'd be happy to talk one-on-one with them, but I don't want to necessarily spend more time on that scenario if someone's not actually having to work on that. And if you are, we can talk more, but.
Yeah. So are you saying that if it's under 50 employees, they're not eligible, or?
Yes, or that it's not applicable to that you don't have to comply with the FFCRA. If you want to take advantage of it, you still can, but you don't have to offer those programs to your employees.
So I thought I remembered hearing that there was possibly an error that they said it was mandatory for less than 50. And people were speculating that that must have been a mistake. This is what I thought it came from Chris Riffle.
This is as soon, Colleen, this is as soon as, because I was going to talk more about this credit program on
Yeah.
Wednesday morning.
Yeah,
And that was as soon as Wednesday morning on DOL's website that it said 50.
so they
at least
corrected
was
it.
direct from there, yeah.
Okay, okay, good. Good, so it's over 50 employees. They've modified that. Okay,
Well, you're not required to participate if you have under 50, but you can if you want.
okay. And that's full-time employees, or is that?
Yes,
Okay,
but they don't really
It's
provide us
prorated.
guidance.
It's a prorated amount is what I remember reading. Like up to 2 weeks. So if you have a 20-hour-a-week person, it's 20 hours per week for 2 weeks.
Yeah. But for who is covered, so Lena, you're right that it can qualify. It doesn't matter if someone's part-time or full-time, but to determine eligibility, meaning does the program apply to you if you're forced to comply with it, I believe that they're only looking at full-time status. But when you're doing the calculation of who qualifies, it's, yes, part-time goes into those qualifications and is prorated.
okay.
Okay, yeah, because the poster that they sent out, that is my understanding, it was a mandatory poster from Department of Labor that had to be posted with all of your other employer posters. But I'll have to double check that, because I have a couple of employers that actually had employees self-quarantining, and I was trying to figure out if they would be able to use this pay, but there's no doctor's note, there's no doctor's requirement that they do it, and I haven't heard any further guidance on what those requirements are. And does the government shutdown qualify? Or like if you're an employer, if you're a business owner, can you pay yourself and then get the tax credit because your business is closed due to the governor's order?
Well, that's also a question, that does the governor's order qualify as an official federal government shutdown compared to the CDC actually coming into your business and shutting it down? And at least initially, and I don't think that they've still actually decided this, unfortunately, is does that governor order qualify as a government enforced shutdown? We know, it practically does, but they still don't have an answer for that, unfortunately, which is also part of the qualification criteria.
Right. That's the concern. Go ahead.
Oh, I've been on some email strings with government entities that are debating with their large, like Lane Powell is a huge law firm in Seattle, and I've forgotten which other one, but they both had different interpretations. And so it was at the Washington State Association of Counties and Washington Public Ports Association, they were saying, the legal entities that we get advice from aren't sure.
Yeah, it's the day we're living in right now. It's a good thing, Colleen, that you're holding all these webinars, that you're posting information, because everything is so new. And whenever we're talking to our clients, we need to remind them and empower them to say, continue to check back daily, or every other day, because everything is changing. And we just continue to post. We'll do that forgiveness presentation on Tuesday, but remind them that, hey, there's probably going to be more guidance coming out this week from Treasury and SBA, so continue to check back.
Yeah, I've been thinking what we're going to call the Tuesday webinar. I think it's going to be Graham is helping you ask for forgiveness.
I've been really careful with my PPP applications to make sure that I'm reporting full-time equivalent employees, and how I'm calculating that number, which I don't know if this is really the way, the way that it should be done is with 2080 hours a year. So I'm taking the total hours worked divided by 2080, which is the standard, you know, has been the standard full-time equivalent for years. But a lot of places are now saying 30 hours a week is full-time equivalent, or 35 hours a week is full-time equivalent, not the full 40. But I've been prepping up my applications that way with the anticipation that that's going to be an issue at the end when we're asking for forgiveness. And I have a lot of people that have part-time employees. So,
Oh yeah, look at all those restaurant owners, right? You get people in the service industry that are working odd out, you know, maybe they only cover 1 or 2 shifts a week. How are we including them in headcount?
yeah.
And
Well, and
reduction
the
in
idle,
pay and
I've had most of my clients, I think, that applied for the idle have actually received their funding now. And I had one who put down 8 employees, which a lot of them are subcontractors and part-time employees, but she got paid the whole amount. So I don't know if they're going to come back and say, well, now tell me who your full-time equivalent employees are. And
right.
so it's an interesting world for sure, and changing by the hour.
Yeah, and that's why I'm hoping that because the government was so focused on PPP guidance and rollout, that now they'll shift their focus to guidance and rollout on the forgiveness. And that's where we also have to change gears at the same time in how we're educating our clients in our county and the peninsula as a whole up here.
I have a question for you guys, if I may. When your clients applied for the PPP loan and they were working on calculating the average annual payroll, was it from March 2019 through February of 2020 all the time? Or is that just what certain banks were doing? Was there clear guidance on those dates?
For me, I used February 1st to January 31st, which was the original guidance that I got, but not everybody keeps their records in that format. So for some of them, I used January, all of the calendar year 2019, and others actually had more payroll in March and April. So I moved it way out to be the last 12-month period.
So I know for, well, first federal, and I think it was Sound 2, they wanted March 2019, March 1st, 2019 till February 29th, 2020.
I think that the final guidance from Treasury was actually either the full calendar year of 2019 or a seasonal worker could make the election from February 19 to the end of June. And that if you weren't in a full year of business through 2019, you could elect January and February of this year. But I think that there's going to be a lot of latitude in that because SBA didn't officially come out with that guidance right away. That guidance had actually changed because they were initially saying for the calendar year prior to the application. So that's what led us into calculating from February 19 to into January or March of 19 into 2020. And because of that, I don't think anyone will be penalized for using any of those calculations along those lines. I think they'll all be accepted.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. I got to hop. I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
All
Thanks,
right. See you, Rick.
Bye.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more critical as far as the forgiveness calculation, because that's where any of those issues are going to come up as far as, you know, I don't think they're going to question how much you got and did you calculate it correctly? Because in the end, you're either going to have to pay it back or it'll be forgiven based on what your payroll was in the following 8-week period.
Right.
So.
And you did the right thing, Lena, you want to maximize the total loan amount and look at the different scenarios and start with that figure. And that's the right recommendation and what we all should have been doing with clients.
So, and everybody heard that they're going to be opened up on Monday at 7.
7:30.
At 7:30?
Yeah.
On Monday?
Yep.
Eastern?
That's what I heard.
Yeah, hopefully those bank employees are there by 7 though, and already preloaded and have their screens up and ready to hit submit at 10:30 or 7:30 Pacific time.
It's Pacific time?
Yeah, 7:30 Pacific time, 10:30 Eastern Standard.
I'm just so curious about how SBA is going to handle that. That, you know, so you have a license, but what if it crashes and then it goes back up and then somebody's watching and somebody else isn't? And
They should have factored that into this round. They already experienced the crash. It's not that hard to contemplate that. Sorry, you're gonna get me. I'm on my set. You know, I'm drinking coffee still. I'm gonna get heated and passionate about this.
you and Brian should talk together. He has the same viewpoint, Brian Garrett there.
Brian, you're muted. I see you're trying to talk though.
Oh, no, I was just agreeing.
Yeah. Mhm.
All right, I gotta hop off too because I need to call a whole bunch of people still, but
Yeah.
I'm hoping that all of the loans that I submitted will be funded. We'll see.
So I hope I didn't screw up.
See you, Lena.
Thanks, Lena. Bye. I hope I didn't screw up, but Paul Gottlieb interviewed me today, and you know, he was saying, okay, so what's the message for businesses with these PPP loans? And I said, if they haven't applied, they need to do it very quickly. The money will run out very fast, and we want to ensure that businesses in Clallam and Jefferson counties are able to receive this benefit that is available to them. So maybe it's too late. I looked online and I saw Sound was still accepting applications. I know First Federal formally is not, but you can email them at their ppp@ourfirstfed.com address. And so maybe, you know, that article will get their hopes up, and then they can't get their application in. And
Well, if they don't get an application in, they have 0% chance, right?
yeah.
So it's better that they at least try and get something going. So you didn't screw up at all. We still encourage people up to the last minute or even this weekend, if they didn't get something in, get it in. And if they don't qualify for the PPP, now we look at, well, take advantage of the employee tax retention credit, because that's basically maybe $5,000 a year per employee, doesn't count for the owner. But let's start talking about alternatives. So that way you can kind of keep some kind of motivation. We know that working with business owners is also, it's not just about financials, that it's also about empowering people and building confidence in them. So if people aren't getting into this, we need to continue to instill confidence in them moving forward, and having another tool of saying, yeah, you didn't get in here, but here's another tool for you that can really help your company. Let's make sure you understand it, take advantage of it, and let's keep moving.
So can I get your guys' input on a different matter? Do you guys need to jump off?
I've got
okay.
a couple minutes.
Okay, so, you know, Craft 3, you guys familiar with Craft 3?
Yep.
Probably most of you are. They've been, and I've got a call with the PA Chamber. They have been talking about trying to create a loan program that they can offer money at 5% interest, and they'll delay the payments and all this. But in order to do that for Clallam or Jefferson counties, they want 20% donated to the Craft 3 bank. And so they want grant money to go towards that program to be a loan loss guarantee. Did I get that right? Is that right? What it's called, Brian Garrett? Loan loss guarantee, I think. I think that.
I'm not,
Loan loss enhancement, I think is what they're talking about.
Okay,
Loan
okay.
loss reserve.
What is it, Brian?
The loan loss reserve. It's just a
Okay,
cash you put off to the side to offset your losses.
okay, loan loss reserve, that's what it is. So I'm getting some phone calls and stuff from people saying, why doesn't the EDC support this? And so they want to use CDBG funds, or, you know, have the EDC help raise money for Craft 3 to have this. But I believe and so I got a ton of questions about the EIDL loan process. there's going to be $50 billion of additional funding for the EIDL loans. So is that just supposed to fund applications that are already in the queue that for businesses that haven't been funded, or will there be new opportunities for businesses that need loans going forward? That's 3.75%. It's not 5%. And it also doesn't require our local grant money to act as a loan loss enhancement for a nonprofit that, you know, pays its people pretty darn well. And there's a component that, you know, is going to overhead there certainly. And so if there's going to be EIDL loans available and there's, you know, it's no payments for 12 months, it seems that we'd rather say, tell businesses get that loan rather than us taking our grant money or our limited donation money to offset a higher cost grant program. Am I right in my thinking, or am I missing something here?
I think you got a good point.
Yeah, Colleen, I'm not familiar with what Craft 3 is trying to do, but anytime a bank has to raise its loan loss reserves, it's generally mandated by the regulators because they've deemed that their portfolio of loans is at a much higher level of risk. So instead of 1 or 2%, they might make the bank raise it to 3 or 5% of their total loan portfolio. And sometimes that comes straight out of capital or income. Now, Craft 3 is a nonprofit, so how they're, if they want to make loans, and then it sounds to me like they're already planning on charging these loans off against a presumed bigger loan loss reserve. I mean, that's
Correct.
the only thing
That's right.
I mean,
And they're not a depository, you know, so
No.
a lot of that loan loss reserve applies to banks that are using depository funds for loans. So they're not subject to those same requirements. They probably have, as part of their portfolio management system, some internal loan loss reserve that they try to set aside. And they're basically saying, because these are riskier loans, we're going to pad that with the CDBG money to basically, you know, cover our losses, and then charging more on top of it. So,
Well, and it's not just CDBG, it's also, hey, Clallam EDC, will you help us raise
I see.
from local people who
Yeah.
will then, part of this money, it will multiply, like we raised and they were talking about asking the county for $100,000 so that they could do a $500,000 loan program. $100,000 would go.
That's not much ratio leverage, 100 or 100 for 500,000. That's, you're doing your reserve at 20, expecting a 20% default rate.
That's right.
Yeah, I'd want a much higher leverage ratio, and I don't, that just, it seems really high. I mean, on the
It is.
government side, when we had to approve, you know, we had approved subsidy to guarantee X amount of loans. And I don't remember any of our programs ever being higher than like 3% max.
Yeah, the 20% is crazy high, and you know, I'm trying to channel my former colleagues at Craft 3 and what they're thinking. But I think, like Brian Garrett said, or a couple of y'all said, is they're just padding it, knowing that they want to be in the game somehow, and not for profitability. I do have to defend them on that. I don't think they're doing this to try and be relevant, because for their system, 5% loans are unprofitable already. But they're recognizing that from their standards, they're going to do something fast and loose. And yeah, so that 20% reserve is ridiculously high. What I don't know is what's on the back end of that. So Spokane apparently came to the table with some cash, I think 100,000 maybe. They announced it today. So what I don't know is, in lieu of just sending that out and granting it, you know, they're saying, well, we can, you know, leverage that 5X and, you know, be that much more money out on the streets. We know that we're going to have higher than usual losses, which essentially would become a grant. But if things go better, then they're pessimistically, predicting. I don't know what happens to any remainder fund, if it goes back into the revolving loan fund, if it's credited back to Spokane or what. So Colleen, you had mentioned that early on, is like, well, what happens to the money? Why are we donating it to Craft 3?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
presumably you never touch it, so it just stays there, and you don't see an increase in your default rate, and you never touch that money, and maybe put it to some other use. But now that they have it, it becomes a grant essentially to them when all of this blows over.
Well, yeah, once you put money into loan loss reserve, it's sunk money. You have
Right.
to get, at least in the banking, and I can't speak to nonprofits, but you have to get special dispensation from your accountants and the regulators to pull it back out of loan loss reserve.
Yeah, what would be better is to put it in like a CD or some kind of cash collateral account at a bank for the benefit of Craft 3, only if they need it, and then you could actually bring it back when this blows over. And
If
by
it
the way,
hasn't been
the
used.
banks that I've worked with that have used this loan loss reserve enhancement strategy do not do any underwriting for the loans. So I doubt that Craft 3 is not going to do the underwriting and basically review everything. And you know what I mean, Brian. They're going to still apply their underwriting standards to every loan application.
Well, yeah, I would hope. I mean, I would hope so, as
Mhm.
opposed to fog and mirror, you get a loan.
Well,
But,
Brian, I do have to say that they say the term loan loss reserve, but that's like in name only. It's not from the
Okay.
world, the formal banking world that you and I came from. It takes an act of
Yeah.
God to move those around on the balance sheet.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
that and the Pope gets it done.
Mhm. Okay, I just wanted to see if there was something I was missing here. But the big thing is will there be more funds available for business through an EIDL program? And if not, then maybe this is something that we need to look at. And I know with the EIDL loan, I think it's 25,000 does not require any collateral, and 200,000 doesn't require any personal guarantee. Did I get that right?
Yep. Under 25,000, no collateral. Under 200,000, no personal guarantee,
Okay.
but collateral if they can get it.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's going to be important for us to understand. And on Wednesday, that's one of the questions I want to be asking Kilmer about. Hopefully we'll have some information about that beforehand. So if, we can get that from SBDC. I wanted to ask Mike Rykoff that, if he knows if those funds are depleted because there's already a backlog of applications, or if there's potentially more money available going forward. And then, they said 10 billion, another 10 billion for the EIDL grants. What is that? Can new people apply, or is it, there's a backlog? And are they looking at, anyway, go ahead.
I think both, because isn't the EIDL application live as we're sitting here? I don't think they closed it off. So I would.
Yeah,
I
I think they did. I checked
Okay.
about an hour ago, and it was
Yep.
not even on their site.
Yep.
Okay.
It's closed
I would
right
say
now.
the backlog.
Mhm.
Well, there are some people that, at least the people that have called me and said that they filled out an application for the EIDL loan. They haven't heard a word. So I would assume those are sitting in limbo somewhere, waiting for the refunding.
Actually, a lot of people, I keep on hearing from folks that they got $1,000 or $3,000 or 5,000 or 10,000, that they, weren't notified that it was coming. They just saw in their account something EID Treasury and then a dump of money.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
for the
'cause
advance. So we've had several
Yeah.
clients now actually get a loan in addition
Okay,
to
yeah.
the advance.
Mm-hmm.
So they're being processed. And these are the few that I know of were right out of the gate in the first week of March.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right.
the one person I talked to today, they have received their PPP loan, but they're idle, and no word, no, absolutely nothing.
Totally different regime. You know, you're dealing with SBA staff in the one case and banks, which have a mandate to process these applications within 10 days or something, right? On the other hand, so.
Okay, well,
But the question is how much of that PPP is already committed of the new monies by these people sitting in limbo? I mean, that's,
How much of the idle is?
idle, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious. I would assume the same. It's the same case with the idle as it is with the PPP loans.
So, and if that is the case, then we maybe need to be looking at other resources, or do you think we should say, no, the federal government will, you know, come up with more funds. Let's go with that instead of leveraging our few dollars for a loan program. I don't know. And then
I don't know if,
yeah, anyway.
yeah, I just don't know if we could come up with enough to be meaningful,
Mhm.
us in Clallam.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Brian, Brian Koo, how much was Craft 3 hoping to make available with this additional loan loss reserve?
Well, if they said if they can raise 50, then they'll turn that into 250. If it's 100, they can turn that into 5.
So, and I understand the PA chamber is going to ask the county for 100,000 so they can do a $500,000 loan through Craft 3 at 5% interest. So, and I'm not real supportive of that. And I'm guessing if the EDC comes in and says, that it won't happen, but really am hesitant to do that unilaterally without, you know, a lot more conversation with our partners to understand the full, you know, banking situation.
I agree.
What's your pause on that? I mean, I get it, 100,000 is real money, but are you saying that could be better utilized elsewhere?
I think it could be used for micro grants. You know, first of all, I don't know how the county can give money to you can't loan public credit in our state. It's against the Constitution. So I don't know how they could say yes. But I just think that if there's other loan programs, which like the Coastal Community Fund, that program doesn't ask for local match dollars. So I think we should, you know, utilize other programs that don't require our donations to go towards a fairly, you know, relative to everything else, expensive loan. I mean, they're talking about using coin and having coin be part of doing it through Craft 3.
That won't fly at all because line or coin investors want their money back. I would push back a little, and granted, I'm the biased one since I used to work at Craft 3. So noted bias, but I would say that if we had $100,000 on the desk and we were saying, what do we do with this? I think there's a value proposition made to leverage that up 5x, and knowing that that's going to go out, that's going to be a quote unquote gift of public funds at the end of the day versus turning that into a micro grant program. Now, I do agree with you and Mike in our previous conversations about there is cash needed desperately at the lowest level of our income, you know, stratosphere and today. So that's why I'm 100% for moving forward with the CBDG trajectory as we're going. But I would just say we should give it a little more thought. Now, Clallam, obviously, y'all can do whatever you want, but collectively give it a little more thought than what you're saying, because a 5% loan with some pretty loose terms and far looser underwriting than most programs is nothing to sneeze at. I mean, that's still critical capital out on the street.
So I have reservations, but I'm not in an absolute no.
But you're not proposing, Brian, that they use the CDBG fund for that leverage, because that's very restricted money. I mean, it has to go to LMI recipients. There'd be all kinds of caveats about using that.
for the sake of everyone else, Colleen, Mike, and I talked about that. We had a quick chat about using the CBDG funds, and I'm convinced, like they are, that no, that needs to move forward in the trajectory that it is with low to moderate income household grants, and just get it out on the streets, because there's more of a need than we're going to have supply. So, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and they won't let them use it for that. It's not a permitted use for those CDBG funds.
Well, that too.
And the state came out, by the way, with
As a
the,
non-starter for commerce and for HUD.
did you guys see that HUD put out the money, how it's being allocated by entitlement communities and non-entitlement for the state? I was doing a little bit of analysis, and I'll send that to you for our state. But it's like 7.7 million for the non-entitlement communities, which Clallam and Jefferson both fall in. Okay, well, I think that's it. Thanks, guys, for your time and conversation. Appreciate it.
Thanks for doing this,
Thank
Cole.
you.
Thanks, Graham.
Okay, thank
See
you,
you guys.
Graham. Okay, bye.
Enjoy that growler tonight.
You got it.